because it turns out that Drusilla was a contestant in the Miss World pageant in Gambia. But it gets better. It gets better. She was not supposed to be a contestant in the Miss World pageant in Gambia. Her sister was. But in between being nominated to represent Montserrat and the date, her sister was pregnant and said, well, I can't go. And Drew said, I'll do it. I'll just go. I'll just turn up and compete in the Miss World pageant. And she did. And it turns out that she has this great skill, this talent, which also I didn't know about. It was singing. She competed singing as her main talent in the Miss World pageant. Now, Drew, with the most enormous respect to you, and in particular your sister, whom I have never met, I'm just going to take a flyer and say this might have been good for Montserrat. I think Montserrat got a good deal out of this. So now let me turn to James. He applied to a PhD at Oxford and got in. So he went to Oxford and he wrote a PhD dissertation on land relations and land reform in the Philippines. It ended up being published, of course, in due course and made a big impact, a big contribution. And then his next major stop was the London School of Economics and Political Science, where, as he has spoken to, he joined the then Development Studies Institute when it was brand new. So I'm going to give Drew pride of place as employee number 1, and I'm going to call James number 3. But if I'm really honest, they were both present at the birth. And I spoke to an even more senior colleague who then retired for some time now yesterday afternoon, and he described to me how James and said colleague, who I shall not name, and 1 or 2 other people, but really a couple of people kicked around ideas and thought, we're going to do development studies, we're going to teach a course, we're going to design the curriculum, we're going to hear the topics, hear the reading list, what order should we go in, how do we theorize about adverse incorporation into the world economy, into the world political system. And the ideas that they kicked around got turned into reality, in the words of my unnamed colleague by James. James was the one who made it happen. James was the man who turned these ideas into reality. And first you had a course, and then they drummed up students, and then they fashioned an entire master's program around it, and then they fashioned an entire institute around that. And throughout all of that, in building the program, the institute, in building student numbers and hiring more people, James was the one who made it happen. This came up again and again in my conversations. Now, around then, I was joining the department as a PhD student, so at the lowest level of the totem pole. And I was vaguely aware that at the highest level, the school level, the elephants were fighting and grass was getting trampled. So I put my head down and said, I'm just getting back to my dissertation, which if you're a PhD student, this is always the right answer. It turns out it was an existential crisis for the Development Studies Institute as then, where the entire thing might have collapsed. And the man who stepped forward into the breach and put it all together, kept the ship sailing, allowing us to grow over time, not just to not fall apart, but to grow and to be the success that you see in front of us today, was James. He stepped into the breach and he led the department. I think at the time you were just a senior lecturer, so way too young, way too junior by LSE standard. There should be professors who are running this sort of thing. But James did that because there was a need and there was no one else to do it, and so he did it. I can only imagine that it was through, well, I know that it was through dint of inspiration and perspiration, immense amounts of work, and I can imagine it was gallons of coffee and no sleep. But you kept the show on the road. Sometime after that, the Crisis States program came about when some people had some ideas about a research agenda to put forward to DFID, to the government of Britain. And it was presented, the government said, yes, we'll fund this. We think this Crisis States agenda is really exciting. We want the LSE to do the research. We want it to be at the Development Studies Institute, but we don't want that other guy to be the head, because we need somebody who works hard, who's committed, and who will deliver, who's organized and will deliver. And so again, James stepped into the breach, and James saw the Crisis States program through 2 cycles of funding in 10 years, a big research agenda, lots of publications that really put the LSE on the map for crisis states, conflict states, state fragility, and state strength. And after that, he came back to run the LSE Development Studies, which is maybe his first and greatest intellectual love, and has been the head of that for a long time since. So please join me in giving the warmest thanks. If the fact that we're here, that we're even here and have something to celebrate, is down to people like Priscilla and James in particular, more than anyone else in this room. Please join me in thanking them and then join us. So I think, yeah.
Oh, you want to be seated?